She was gone. Daisy, a loyal Australian shepherd, never strayed far from home. Her world, now defined by the 5 tiny puppies she had just given birth to, stretched no further than the back porch in the quiet woods behind their suburban Colorado home. But that afternoon she vanished into the trees, leaving behind a silence that soon filled with the whimpers of her newborn litter. Hours stretched into an eternity. The puppies cried, their tiny bodies shivering with hunger and fear. The Miller family, Sarah, David, and their children, Lily and Tom, frantically searched, their voices hoarse from calling Daisy's name into the fading light. Panic, cold and sharp, began to creep into their hearts. Had something terrible happened? A cunning predator? A hidden trap? Then, just as the last rays of sunset painted the sky in fiery hues, a rustle near the tree line broke the agonizing silence. Daisy emerged, her usually pristine fur matted with dirt and leaves. But she wasn't alone. Clutched gently in her powerful jaws, barely breathing, was a small, spotted creature. At first they thought it was a tiny kitten, no bigger than a paperback book. But as the family rushed forward, their hearts hammering against their ribs, they saw the distinctive tufted ears, the piercing wild eyes. It wasn't a kitten, it was a bobcat cub, starving, frozen, but miraculously still alive. And Daisy, their devoted dog, had carried him home. For a long moment no one moved. The bobcat cub didn't struggle, he didn't hiss or growl. He simply lay there in Daisy's gentle grip, limp, cold, and silent, a fragile spark of life clinging to existence. The Miller family stared, stunned into disbelief. Then pure instinct kicked in. They rushed forward, speaking in hushed, soothing tones, their arms outstretched. Daisy, sensing their intent, carefully released the cub onto the porch, her eyes never leaving the little body. Lily, quick thinking, fetched a soft fleece blanket, while David brought a shallow, cardboard box, carefully lined with warm towels. They moved with a desperate urgency, as if the smallest mistake might sever the fragile thread still tying this wild creature to their world. The cub was impossibly light, his fur damp and matted. His breaths were shallow, uneven, barely there. Someone gently draped the warm blanket over him, tucking it close while Tom knelt, offering a dropperful of sugar water. He licked slowly at first, a faint, tentative flicker of life, then again a tiny spark igniting. Inside the house, Daisy's 5 puppies cried out their pleas, growing louder. They had been without their mother for what felt like an age, their tiny bodies pushing against the sides of their playpen, yelping and whining. Daisy stepped inside, her tail low, but wagging softly, a silent promise of her return. She nuzzled each one, reassuring them. They were safe now. The cub remained on the porch, nestled in his blanket, watched carefully through the glass door. The family wasn't sure what to do. They didn't even know if he would survive the night. But Daisy already knew. Every few minutes, she padded back to check on him, her nose pressed against the door, watching, waiting, guarding. She hadn't just brought home a lost creature, she had brought home a life. By morning the air was warmer, but the cub still hadn't moved much. He lay curled in the same blanket, his small sides rising and falling with a fragile, rhythmic beat. The Miller family had barely slept, checking on him throughout the night, placing warm water bottles around his box, whispering quiet words of encouragement, as if he could understand. Daisy didn't leave his side. Once the puppies were fed and settled, she returned to the porch, lying down next to the box, pressing her body close against the wood floor, as if her very presence might keep him anchored to the world. When the cub finally opened his eyes, they were glassy and unfocused, but undeniably alive. They immediately called the local wildlife veterinarian, unsure what the law stated, unsure what to even ask. Could he stay? Should he be taken away? For now, the only answer that mattered was that he desperately needed warmth, food, and time. They named him Aspen. The next day, they brought Aspen's box inside. Daisy watched as the cub slowly began to stir, to sniff, to lift his head. She stayed close, never pushy, but always near. Aspen seemed to recognize something in her presence. He didn't flinch when she approached. He didn't run when she licked the top of his head with the same careful patience she showed her own puppies. That evening, something truly shifted. While the family sat nearby, Aspen, on wobbly legs, took a few tentative steps out of his box. Daisy stood too, her puppies watching from their corner eyes wide with curiosity. Aspen walked toward them. He didn't hiss, he didn't growl, he just looked curious. One of the puppies, Buddy, let out a sharp bark, startled by the unfamiliar scent. But Daisy emitted a low, calm sound from her throat, a sound of reassurance of acceptance. It was enough. Aspen curled up beside the puppies that night, not quite apart, not quite an outsider, somewhere in between, a visitor, a question, a profound beginning. By the end of the week, Aspen wasn't just surviving, he was transforming. The wildness within him hadn't vanished, but it had softened, tempered by the warmth of domesticity. He followed Daisy with quiet steps, always a few paces behind, observing how she moved, how she cared for her puppies. When they nursed, he sat nearby, watching intently. When they played, he watched at first, then cautiously began to follow. His movements were tentative, unsure, but there was no fear in his eyes now, only a deep longing for connection. Daisy noticed. One morning, as her puppies tumbled across a soft blanket in the living room, wrestling and yipping in clumsy joy, Aspen approached. He crouched low, uncertain, a tiny bobcat cub, desperate for connection. One of the pups, Maple the boldest of the litter, bounded up and nosed at him. Aspen flinched his ears, pulling back. Then Daisy stepped between them. For a split second, the room froze the air, thick with anticipation. But instead of separating them, she licked Aspen's ear, then gently nudged him forward toward the others. An invitation, a permission. That was the moment it truly changed. From then on, Aspen was no longer just the stranger on the edge of the nest. He was with them. He chased tails. He batted at toys. He slept in the pile of warm fur tucked comfortably between his adoptive siblings, breathing in rhythm with theirs. And Daisy, she treated him no differently. She groomed him, corrected him, guarded him. Her instincts didn't question whether he belonged. They simply knew this was one of her young. The Miller family watched in disbelief as this wild animal, born to the ancient forest, found safety not in trees or dens, but in the soft heartbeat of a loving home. He didn't try to leave. He didn't look longingly to the woods. He had found his place in the warmth of a mother's breath and the tangled bodies of puppies who no longer saw him as anything but their brother. As the days passed, Aspen grew stronger. His legs steadied, his eyes grew brighter, gleaming with life. The dullness in his coat gave way to a soft, healthy shine. He had an appetite now not just for food, but for touch, for warmth, for life itself. The family took turns feeding him with a special bottle, gently brushing the matted fur behind his ears, talking to him in the same quiet tones they used with the puppies. At first they were cautious, unsure. A wild bobcat wasn't meant to live inside a house filled with children, blankets, and chew toys. But Aspen changed that perception. He didn't hide. He didn't claw or bite. He moved through the rooms as if he belonged there, as if the very walls recognized him. He curled up beside the fireplace, slept with his head resting on Lily's foot, followed the family from room to room, quiet, observant, as if he had always lived among them. Daisy watched over him no less than she did her own, and the puppies, now growing fast, no longer noticed the difference. To them, Aspen was just another one of them. Maybe a little bigger, a little quieter, but theirs all the same. And slowly, wonderfully, the family began to feel the same. They knew the forest was his first home. They knew wild animals weren't meant to live within human walls. But Aspen had made his choice. He had followed Daisy out of the cold, had stayed close, had never tried to return. It felt like something more than mere chance. Perhaps Daisy hadn't just found him in the woods. Perhaps she had heard something. A desperate cry, a beating heart, a profound calling. Perhaps she hadn't just brought home a lost cub. Perhaps she had brought home someone who was always meant to be part of them. A few quiet weeks passed. Aspen was thriving, stronger, faster, more confident. He played with the puppies like a true sibling, slept curled beside them in a tangled heap of fur and breath. The rhythm of the household was his own now. He knew every creak in the floorboards, every voice, every hand that reached out to pet him. And then the letter came. It arrived folded official, stamped by the Department of Wildlife Conservation. Someone had reported them. An anonymous complaint about a bobcat being kept illegally inside a family home. The message was chillingly clear. Under state law, keeping a wild animal like Aspen was strictly prohibited. No exceptions. Regardless of how tame he seemed, they were given 7 days to surrender him to a certified wildlife rehabilitation center. The room fell silent, the tension palpable. The puppies whimpered, sensing the unspoken fear. Daisy sat beside Aspen protectively, her ears flicking, her eyes steady and resolute. And Aspen didn't know. He just looked up calm, waiting for the next moment in his world of unquestioning safety. But for the family, everything cracked open. He wasn't a wild threat. He wasn't unpredictable or dangerous. He had grown up beneath their roof, ate from the same bowls, chased toys through the hallway. He purred in his sleep. He blinked slowly when they whispered his name. He had a heartbeat that matched theirs. They couldn't imagine how to make him understand why he had to leave, why the comforting scent of pine wood and warm blankets would be replaced by cold metal and strangers. To the world, he was still a bobcat, but to them, he was home. The seventh day arrived with a relentless rain. The family held Aspen close that morning, tears streaming down their faces. He didn't resist. He didn't struggle. He simply rested his head against Lily's chest, blinking slowly, breathing in her scent as if trying to memorize every molecule. Then he was gone. The wildlife transport team was gentle, respectful. They placed him in a padded crate and loaded him into the van. The door closed with a soft click that echoed too loudly in the suffocating silence that followed. He was taken 30 miles away to a licensed wildlife center, a secure facility built for animals like him, animals meant to return to the wild. Aspen didn't move when they opened the crate. He stepped out slowly into the concrete-floored enclosure, circled once, and lay down facing the far corner. He didn't eat. He didn't drink. He didn't hiss or growl. He just waited. At home, Daisy searched the house room by agonizing room. She sniffed the empty blanket Aspen used to sleep on, then lay down beside it, refusing to move. She stopped eating, her loyal heart aching for her lost cub. The puppies ran through the hallways, barking at shadows, chewing toys they quickly abandoned. The house was still full of noise, but the warmth was gone. Something essential had been pulled from the very center of their world. The children kept asking when Aspen would come back. The parents, their hearts heavy with despair, didn't know what to say. In the wildlife center, Aspen remained silent. He didn't explore. He didn't react to the other animals nearby. He simply stared at the same corner for hours at a time. The staff noted his vital signs were stable, but something profound was missing. He wasn't angry. He wasn't scared. He was grieving. The house felt empty, but the family wasn't ready to give up. They didn't fight the law. Instead, they made a request, a calm, respectful plea. Allow Aspen to return, at least for now. Let him grow stronger in the only environment where he had ever truly lived. Let him stay under supervision with regular check-ins from specialists. And when the time came when instinct stirred and nature called, then he could choose his own path. They knew the rules, but they also knew Aspen. They wrote heartfelt letters, posted countless photos, and shared poignant video clips of Aspen curled up with the puppies of Daisy, gently grooming him like her own. One video, just 23 seconds long, showing Aspen asleep with his paw draped over Daisy's muzzle, went viral in less than a day. Thousands of people responded. Comments poured in from every corner of the country. Teachers, parents, veterans, zookeepers. They didn't see a wild animal. They saw a son, a brother, a miracle. The family reached out to wildlife biologists, hoping someone would help them build a case. One specialist, a senior researcher from a regional university, reviewed hours of footage and wrote a formal statement. His words were simple, yet incredibly powerful. Aspen's behavior is not typical of a wild bobcat. He shows sustained imprinting on the domestic dog who raised him and her litter. He identifies them as his social group. Forcing him into a standard wildlife reintroduction protocol risks irreversible psychological harm. The online petition passed 10,000 signatures, then 20,000, then an astonishing 30,000. Something was shifting, not just in public opinion, but among the officials reviewing the case. The story had become more than a family and their rescued bobcat. It had become a question of compassion and choice. 2 weeks after the petition began, the phone rang. It was the Department of Wildlife Conservation. The voice on the other end was calm, deliberate, yet softer than before. After reviewing the behavioral experts' report, and in light of the overwhelming public support, the official stated, "We have come to a decision. An exception will be granted. Aspen will be allowed to return home." There were conditions, of course. He would remain under official observation as part of a supervised study in wildlife adaptation. There would be regular check-ins from licensed specialists, and the family would maintain a controlled environment, submitting detailed reports. But the most important detail was this: he would be with his family. The day Aspen came back was quiet. No fanfare, no cameras, just the familiar sound of the van pulling into the driveway and the front door swinging open. Daisy was the first to rise. She trotted forward slowly, ears perked, her tail stiff with an almost unbearable anticipation. Aspen stepped into the house with cautious steps, but then he saw her. The hesitation vanished. He moved faster, head low, body relaxed, a picture of joyous recognition. Daisy licked his face once, then lay down so he could curl into her side. The puppies rushed in next, barking and tumbling in a messy, wagging reunion. Aspen didn't retreat. He stayed with them, weaving between them, greeting each one as if no time had passed at all. It was like he had never left. The family stood back, watching, silently, tears mingling with relieved smiles. Long, shuddering exhales held for too long were finally released. Aspen was home. Not as a guest, not as a secret, not as a wild creature on borrowed time. He was home with a name, a status, and a future. Aspen stayed. He grew alongside the puppies, who were now lanky, wild-hearted adolescents. Their games got louder, faster, more chaotic. But Aspen kept pace with all of it. He chased butterflies across the yard, wrestled in the grass, darted after smells only he could truly understand. They were a family not by blood, but by an unbreakable bond, a tangle of paws, laughter, and shared instincts. Aspen no longer needed to prove he belonged. He just did. But as the seasons turned, so did something inside him. There were moments when Aspen would sit at the edge of the woods for long stretches, his ears twitching, nose lifted to the wind. Sometimes he disappeared into the trees for hours, only to return by dusk, calm and silent. Something ancient in him was beginning to stir. The family understood. They had never tried to cage him. From the beginning, they had promised when the time came, Aspen would have a choice, to stay or to go. And when that day comes, they'll open the door without a word. Because love, the kind that truly saves, doesn't hold tight. It releases. Aspen may one day return to the forest that first nearly took him, but he'll never be lost again. He'll carry with him everything that was given warmth, safety, belonging. Because once in the heart of winter, a mother dog found a wild cub and made him her own. This heartwarming story reminds us that love knows no boundaries and compassion can bridge even the widest divides between species. It teaches us the profound impact of empathy and the power of an unconventional family built on acceptance and mutual respect. Sometimes the greatest lessons about belonging come from the most unexpected places. If this story moved you, help us share more moments like this. Please like this video, share it with your friends, and subscribe to Hope and Fur, where rescue meets the wild and love always finds a way. Video rating, 10/10, a truly inspiring and unforgettable tale. Please leave your comments below. We'd love to hear your thoughts on Aspen's incredible journey.